How are we doing, everybody, and welcome to Russell Heritage Golf. Today I'm talking about how to make the golf swing simple. The idea is that if you're a beginner golfer, this is a great place for you to learn to understand what you're trying to do to become good at golf. It's also a great video for anybody who is looking for consistency, because sometimes we become so lost in swing thoughts that we actually forget what it is that we're trying to do and why we're actually trying to do them. End up trying to achieve things that don't actually necessarily exist for your game. The whole point of this video is that it will explain exactly what it is that you need to be focusing on to make a difference for you, so that you understand what your end game is trying to get to. Let's start talking about how to make a simple golf swing. So the first thing you've got to do to become good at golf is you've got to get the contact right. You've got to learn that you've basically got to strike down in towards the ground. That's the first thing to do, because if you don't understand that the club is designed to strike down in towards the ground, then you're never going to get consistency in contact. Pure simplicity to be good at golf really is designed about your ability to control what is known as the low point, which basically means that what's going to happen is the club, it's going to start next to the ball. When you go back, you're going to lift it up. When you come down, it's going to strike down, and then it's going to go up again. To become consistent at golf, you have to consistently be able to strike in the down part in the same place, or control the low point as best to your ability. If you can't do this, this would explain why you're inconsistent with golf, and this is exactly what you need to start working on first and foremost. Pure focus of actually what it is that you need to start on doing is the simplicity of just striking the club down in towards the ground. If you can strike the club down in towards the ground, then that pretty much guarantees that you're going to be able to hit the ball each and every time. Your inability to do that, so your inability to strike the ground precisely where you want to, is exactly going to be your inability when it comes to hitting the golf ball. To be able to hit that little white golf ball each and every time, you need to make sure that you have the ability to be able to strike down in towards the ground. When you come to hitting the ball, you are then just trying to demonstrate exactly the same thing. But obviously what would happen this time is, as you're coming down, the club would be striking down underneath the golf ball. By striking down underneath the golf ball is going to lift, it's going to give it a trajectory, but by doing that, at least you're going to have consistency, in my opinion, in the most important thing, which is going to be contact. Forward it now, let's say you've gone and spent, repetitions, practice at home, practice down the driving range, and you can now control the low point, right? That means that if you're trying to hit the tee at the driving range, you can hit that tee each and every time. If you're practicing, you can hit the blade of grass that you're focusing on each and every time. You're good at contact. The chances are, though, that you're not necessarily hitting the ball straight because you haven't been thinking about that. What generally happens when I see a lot of amateur golfers is that you become very focused on the strike, which is the correct thing to do. That basically means it eliminates you having too flat a swing, because from this sort of position, I can't strike down in towards the back of the ball. So by focusing on that first, it generally lends itself to you swinging more up and down. That's okay, it gives you the chance of making the contact. The problem is now that golf is a side-on sport, which basically means that the club should be working on an arc, as much as it would in like baseball. Picture a baseball analogy, ball gets pitched in, baseball bat is going to be working on an arc perpendicular to my body, which basically means that the baseball bat is going to be aiming right, square towards target, left. It's exactly the same when you come to hitting a golf shot. You basically need to understand that the club is designed to work on an arc because we are standing to the side of the ball. So in essence, what now needs to happen is that you need to educate yourself that the club should be working on an arc around the body. What we now need to do is we now need to find a way to swing the club on an arc but also strike into the ground. This means then you're controlling what is known as the club path, or the swing plane, or the arc, or whatever, but also maintaining that angle of approach, which is the downward strike in towards the back of the ball. Getting the blend of both of those is going to give you the ability to be able to hit the ball straight, but it's also going to mean that you can hit the ball still each and every time. The best way for you to do this, right, is that the next time you're down the driving range, you just place a couple of obstacles above the target line. What I mean by this is that's the direction I'm hypothetically aiming at this point in time. What you can see now is that I've positioned two golf balls just on the outside part of that line. So now what I've got to do is I've got to try and find a way to be able to get the club on the back of the ball, missing those two objects and still striking the ball. But what's also important is that whilst you're doing that, you still need to make sure that you have the ability to strike down in towards the ground. The key thing here is that if you possess the ability, like I said earlier, to strike down in towards the ground, and you can control the low point, which means the point that you're focusing on, then you've got a very good high probability chance of being able to hit the golf ball each and every time. If you can't do that, you'll see less of a chance, which means you'll be inconsistent with your contact. What I was also saying though, that should be your first focus. Go down the driving range, do that, your contact should improve. But what I am saying is that your direction and things like curvature might start to miss, because there's a very good chance that one of the things that I tend to see with a lot of amateurs is that when you become so focused on striking down, what generally happens is that the club would start to work its way across the target line, therefore decreasing the chance of you being able to hit it straight. What we're trying to do, like I explained earlier, is we're trying to find a way to get the club to work on an arc. But what we've also got to do now is we've got to make sure that we're not only swinging the club on an arc, which means not colliding with the outer golf balls in this scenario, but we're still going to be able to strike down in towards the ground. If you can manage to do both of those tasks, then you've already got a really good chance of being a decent golfer in its pure simplicity form of just achieving those two exercises. Then a question would be, well, what about things like the grip, and going into maybe more detail into the posture? Well, definitely. The idea is that I'd explain to most people is that the club is designed in such a way that basically if you hold the shaft straight for most irons, the leading edge is going to be lifted off the floor. So therefore what you want to do is you want to get the leading edge sitting flat to the floor. That will introduce what's known as a shaft lean. What then starts to happen, that then you can start to explain what the idea of the grip is. So rather than the idea that you've got to grip the club in a certain way and it feels awkward, what we're now saying is that, okay, you need to strike down in towards the ground. Right, we've passed that test, happy days. We've got to swing the club on an arc while striking into the ground. Happy days, we've done that as well. You can achieve both of those outcomes regardless as to how you hold the club, in my opinion. There is massive advantages of gripping the club correctly, the ability to create different angles in your wrist to create more power. But what I'm saying is that by now, if you understand what I'm getting at, and now you understand the club is designed to sit like so, well, if you grip the club in the fingers on the left hand for a right-handed golfer, and you get the heel pad sitting directly on top, then what you'll find is it will naturally create an element of shaft lean. From there, then you just get your right palm sitting on top of your thumb, and then if you choose to do whatever with these fingers here, doesn't really matter. But all of a sudden now we have a grip which is more orthodox, which is going to give you the ability to create different functionality of the wrists. When it comes to the posture, in its simplicity, all you've got to do is educate an individual that basically we are going to be creating a bend of the hips. So the first thing to do is to get your belt buckle down towards the ball. From there, introduce knee flex. You want to widen your stance because obviously, as we're going to progress in a moment, you want to be able to create weight transfer to be able to hit the ball further. So by going this way first and then this way creates a good spine angle. If you explain to people that your spine angle is key for rotation, and if you go knee flex, bum out, you put an arc in your spine which knackers your ability to rotate, then all of a sudden again, these sort of things will start to come more to fruition because you're building those understanding and you're building those foundations in the correct position. So what we're trying to do now is that we need to introduce an element of power. Okay, so we need to introduce an element of distance because most holes on a golf course averaging 300 plus yards, which means for most golfers at the moment, if our golfer's only hitting it 60, 70, 80 yards, they need more distance, otherwise it's going to take them a long time before they get towards the green. So we need to introduce more power. The way you're going to introduce more power is by shifting weight and starting to create a weight transfer. If you start to move weight from right to left and also trigger a rotational movement, then you're going to be able to create more speed. It's the same as any other side-on move. Whether it's our baseball player, you would have to start stepping and turning. It's the same as our football player, stepping and turning, throwing a ball. You'd have to start creating a shift of pressure to be able to create more speed. And now's the time to do it. Because like I've said, hypothetically, we've got a golfer who can hit the ball pretty straight. He can be able to hit down on the ground each time. He's controlling the low point, or she's controlling the low point. Now's time to find more distance. The way you're going to find more distance is that you've got to transfer weight from right to left. The way that you're going to transfer weight in towards the backswing position, we've got to shift the weight in towards the right hand side. Okay, that's how we're going to be able to shift the weight towards the left and trigger rotation. So that is quite a logical and important thing to be able to achieve. What we also know by now, because we spent most of our time trying to strike down in towards the ground, we've also learned that there's no point deviating too far away from the golf ball. So what you need to do in your backswing position now is you need to be able to shift weight in towards the right hand side while still staying centered. This is a really important thing to do because a lot of golfers get themselves messed with this when they start creating this sort of movement. But the problem from this position is that now I can't control the low point again. Now that's why it's really important that you understand this. The idea would be, yes, you're trying to, in its simplicity, keep the head relatively still while still shifting pressure in towards the right hand side. The way you're going to do that is by creating a little bit of lateral movement on the right hand side, but it doesn't matter in terms of the technicality. I would say to an individual, what you've got to do is you've got to get your weight in the right, and they would go, okay, my weight's in the right. But then I would also say, well, you've got to try and keep your head still because we need to stay over the ball, because that's what gave you the ability to strike down in the ground in the first place. And then they would naturally start to evolve to look more this way. If you start to look that way, all of a sudden, even a beginner golfer starts to demonstrate a really good, efficient backswing where they're creating a pressure and a load in the right-hand side just by building it up from the core foundations of exactly what it is that you've got to do. The next thing that we've got to do is that we've got this backswing position. We're trying to create more power, right? And this is where golf becomes a little bit more complicated, because obviously now we're starting to move faster. And that's why I would suggest that you always take your time building in that kind of conscious competence to be able to strike the ground consistently. Once you've done that, then your brain will be able to still find that point and that low point even when you start to speed it up. What we need to do though is we're now looking for power. So here's my weight in the right hand side, I'm still centered. From here, we need to start shifting in towards the left hand side, so the feeling will be that we'll be moving more in front of the ball, but also as we start to trigger a rotation, that is also going to help us stay relatively centered. So obviously again, we don't want to be this way and just this way. That's why I teach an individual that what you want to do is, as much as throwing a ball, you want to be facing the target when you've completed. That again will make sense, and it will resonate with throwing a ball or any other side-on activity. You are not generally going to do it this way. You are going to trigger a rotation so you're facing your target. I think all of a sudden, if you've got the ability to be able to create a backswing position where the weight is in the right heel, and in turn you're able to put pressure down in towards the left hand side and swing all the way through, whilst still controlling the low point, whilst still controlling the arc that the club is coming into the ball, then all of a sudden we have a golf swing which is really good. There's only a few more advanced things that we can start to discuss to really take you to another level. So what I'm trying not to do is I'm trying not to sound condescending. You know, I'm not trying to say that golf is really simple, but what I'm saying is that I think sometimes people try and fast track it. My general suggestion would be, up to now, complete beginner or somebody who's interested in kind of just starting again and learning the process again. First thing you do is you go and spend 1,000 repetitions just hitting the tee on the ground or focusing on the point of ground that you're trying to hit. So if you're hitting the ball on the grass, you're trying to hit the specific blade of grass that you're aiming for. Once you've achieved 1,000 repetitions of those, then you're arguably ready to progress to start to work on the arc as well. Once you've started to be able to work on the arc, which means that the club is no longer swinging above the target line, colliding the golf balls like I demonstrated earlier, and you still have the ability to hit the ground, again, you do another further 1,000 repetitions of those. All of a sudden now you've got a golf swing where you can hit the ball and hit it pretty straight. And the next thing that we started to progress with then is that I discussed a little bit about the grip and the shaft angle and the posture. Again, you go and spend another 1,000 to 2,000 repetitions working on that. Then all of a sudden you have a posture which gives you consistency. You have a width of stance which gives you the ability to transfer weight. You understand the concept of the shaft angle and the leading edge striking underneath the ball theoretically. And you also obtain a decent grip based on the knowledge that you've learned so far. Now all of a sudden you look like a golfer. You've got a posture, you've got a swing which is working on an arc, you can strike down in towards the ground, and again you would go and achieve another 2,000 repetitions, 1,000 repetitions doing that. All of a sudden then you're ready to start to introduce more power into your game. Then you would start to introduce the weight pressure, the shifting pressure from right to left and creating rotation. Then you would go away again. You'd go and spend another 1,000, 2,000 repetitions doing that. The point is how quickly is it going to take you to do 1,000 repetitions? Well, if you hit one basket of balls, 100 balls per week, that's 10 weeks. Yeah? If you do it at home and you do an exercise in the garden, or you find an off-cut bit of carpet you can strike in the garden and you do 100 repetitions a day, then obviously you're starting to do it in a period of 10 days. So really it's based on the repetition before you progress to other things. The problem with a lot of golfers is that you try and fast track it. You go straight for everything, and then the outcome is unpredictable because some shots will go left and you don't know why. Then you'll miss-hit it trying to go straight, and the whole thing just becomes a mess and it's hard to diagnose. That's why you're going to find it easier to be able to working in this sort of progress than just trying to do everything at once. It's just unattainable to try and do everything I've discussed in one visit to the driving range. You know, it's just going to be unrealistic. You know, you might hit a couple of good shots in there, but to be honest with you, you need consistency to be able to play golf. If you break it down into what I've discussed, you know, you've got a very good chance of now hitting the ball a good distance, having the ability to strike the ball off the floor, and also you're going to be able to hit the ball pretty straight. There's loads of other things to kind of advance it. And that's what I mean. We haven't spoken much about things like wrist positions. We haven't spoken much about a massive sequence, how much rotation to trigger, all the rest of it. There are so many things that you can add into the game to try and help you hit the ball further. And that's what I generally specialise my time in doing. You know, I'll help a golfer hit the ball further. I'll help a golfer draw the ball, whatever they want to do. That's where my kind of level comes in. But if you're interested in kind of going, look, I'm in a mess, I want to kind of start again, or you're a complete beginner, then that's the way that you want to do it, in my honest opinion. Break it down into tasks that you can achieve, and then all of a sudden your brain will start to understand the end pattern as to where you're trying to get to, and it will make sense. You have to be patient, you have to persevere, but that is the way that you're going to be able to do it. So the topic of the conversation really was the golf swing made easy. You know, the golf swing is a complex motor patterns of different movements, so it can't be made that easy. And I'm not going to stand in front of a camera and just give you some sort of ridiculous little swing that's going to make you consistent, because it's not true and it won't exist. What I want to do is I want you to be able to trust me, and if you press that subscribe button, you can trust the information that I'm giving you. But what I am saying is that it is completely achievable to be able to play golf, but you've got to break it down into the tasks so that it's logical. Once you can do that and you can understand and prioritise them in the order that I've suggested, you're going to be able to find that you're going to be a competent golfer pretty quickly. If you haven't gone into that thought process first, this would probably explain why you end up hitting a bit of a kind of wall and you can't figure out what you're doing. Because let's say a golfer is trying to work on a wrist move and they're trying to create, I suppose, the term which is known as more lag, and they're trying to do things with their elbow. But fundamentally, they're out of position in the backswing and they don't have consistency in the contact. The question is, what's the point anyway? You know, what's the point in trying to achieve something which isn't actually going to make you a better golfer? For the golfers who have kind of watched this video and kind of hopefully enjoyed it, you know, just question yourself. You know, what are you actually struggling in? Are you struggling in contact? Are you struggling in direction? Are you struggling in distance? Then that makes sense to work on what you need to work on. You know, if an individual is struggling on distance, then the first thing to do is to start working on your movement and your weight transfer. If an individual is struggling on accuracy, then you would work on the club path. But just be careful, if you're struggling with accuracy and you start to work on the club path, that you don't forget that you're still supposed to strike down on the ball as well. I've tried my best. I've tried to make it as little and as uncomplicated as possible. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Always appreciate one of those. Press the subscribe button. It's absolutely free to do so, right? No ifs, no buts. Press that subscribe button, absolutely free. Press the bell icon. That means you'll receive notifications every time a new video comes out. Here's the opportunity which loads of other golfers have taken upon themselves. On the social media links which are in the description below, you can send your swings in to me. I'll either offer you a bit of advice or I'll use the content for the channel. A lot of content is going to be coming up over the next few weeks, where I'm using guys' videos that have come into the channel so that we can all learn together. I'm more than happy for you guys to be a part of it, so take the opportunity to send the swings in. That is absolutely free as well. Always appreciate one of those, and I'll catch up with you again tomorrow.